Welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist virtual worship service, where we gather each week beyond our four walls to be together in these strange and unusual times. I'm Alan Malone, CCUU member and worship associate for this week. Today, my fellow member and graduate of Reverend Darcy's shared pulpit seminar, Amy Holtcamp, will be offering the sermon, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Reads Your Story? Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. All who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning are welcome. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically in recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We believe that it is not necessary to think alike in order to love alike. We are very glad to have you join us in this service of worth giving. Our presenter today, Amy Holtcamp, Amy Boyce Holtcamp, is a theater director, playwright, and sometimes actor. Originally from New York, she has been living in New Orleans for nearly a decade now. She is the chair of drama at the New Orleans Center for the Creative Arts, where she teaches text analysis, Shakespeare, directing, and playwriting, all currently taught over Zoom these days. She is married to another theater teacher, Victor Holtcamp, and lives with him and their son Theo and their dog Franklin. And Alicia will now do the intro.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Our
opening reading will be by Amy Holtcamp. Ricky talks about talking Ricky talks about talking, and this is from Dog Stories by Mary Oliver.
And I'll be doing the first reading, actually.
Okay, good. As I said, Alicia will be doing our first reading.
Ricky, can you explain how it is that Anne and I can talk with you, as we did with Percy too, and we all understand each other? Is it a kind of miracle? It's no miracle, said Ricky. It's actually simple. When you or Anne talk, I listen. When I talk, you listen, as you did with Percy. Of course we listen. No, I mean really listen. Here's a story, and you don't have to visit many houses to find it. One person is talking, the other one is not really listening. Someone can look like they are, but they're actually thinking about something they want to say, or their minds are just wandering, or they're looking at that little box people hold in their hands these days. And people get discouraged, so they quit trying. And the very quiet people, you may have noticed, are often the sad people. Ricky, you've really thought about this. So we can talk together because we really listen, and that's because, yes, because we care.
It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice, invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Since I do not have a chalice, please imagine a virtual chalice as I read the words of the chalice lighting ritual. We light this flame to affirm the light of truth and knowledge, and the warmth of love and community, and the fire of hope and commitment. Cynthia Ramirez, our Director of Religious Education, will now read the words for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to read a story. It's an ancient story that is told in the modern day version. Let's see if y'all can think which one this is. It's called Wings. Look at that strange boy. Everyone from the neighborhood is pointing fingers and watching the sky. How's he doing that? They stretch their necks and shake their heads. Icarus Jackson, a new boy on my block, is flying above the rooftops. He is swooping and diving and looping past people's windows and over the crowd. I don't think he's strange. Icarus Jackson, the flyboy, came to my school last Thursday. His long, strong, proud wings followed him wherever he went. The whole school was staring eyes and wagging tongues. They whispered about his wings and his hair and his shoes, like they whispered about, "Hi, how quiet I am." Our teacher complained that the other kids couldn't help but gawk and stare. He said that Icarus's wings blocked the blackboard and made it hard for the students to pay attention. The teacher told Icarus to leave class until he could figure out what to do with his wings. He left the room quietly, dragging his feathers behind him. One boy snickered. At recess, the snicker grew into a giggle and spread across the playground. Soon all the kids were laughing at Icarus's useless wings. I thought that if he flew just once, everyone would stop laughing. Icarus looked up, flapped his wings a couple of times, then jumped into the air. He swept through the schoolyard like a slow motion instant replay. But the other kids were not impressed. One girl grabbed the basketball. A boy stuffed a handball in his pocket. Somebody nagged. Nobody likes a show off. Their words sent Icarus drifting into the sky, away from the glaring eyes and the pointing fingers. I waited for them to point back at me as I watched Icarus float farther and farther away. Walking home from school, I knew how he felt, how lonely he must be. Maybe I should have said something to those mean kids. I ran through the streets with my eyes to the sky, searching the clouds for Icarus. He struggled to stay in the airs. His wings drooped and his head hung low. He landed heavily on the edge of a building and sat with the pigeons. Pigeons don't make fun of people. A policeman passed by, blew his whistle. "You with the wings, come down from there. Stay yourself on the ground. You'll get in trouble. You'll get hurt." It seemed to me Icarus was already in trouble and hurt. Could the policeman put him in jail for flying? For being different? When the neighborhood kids saw the policeman yelling at him, they exploded with laughter. Icarus dropped to the ground. "Stop," I cried. "Leave him alone." And they did. I called to Icarus and he sailed closer to me. I told him what someone should have long ago. "Your flying is beautiful." For the first time, I saw Icarus smile. At that moment, I forgot about the kids who had laughed at him and me. I was just glad to see Icarus had found his wings again. Look at that amazing boy, I called to all the people on the street as I pointed to my new friend Icarus, swirling through the sky. The end.
Very nice. Joys and sorrows within the congregation are recognized within worship. And in this virtual service, I invite you to write your public messages in the chat box at the bottom of your screen to be read after the hymn. Are we having a hymn? I don't know about that.
Yes,
We'll either
we're
have
having
a
a hymn.
hymn.
Yes,
Okay,
we are having him.
Thank you. We also recognize the joys that are just bubbling up, too new to share, and the sorrows that are unspoken. Please know that you are not alone in your difficult times. Members, if you wish to make contact with the caring team, they can put you in touch with a UU minister. The address is caring@ccuunola.org.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know this, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. 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 Oh yeah,
Very nice. Let's see, I had a thing here and it disappeared. There we go. We have a joy from whom? That my cousin, who was displaced by Hurricane Laura, has successful surgery on her back yesterday. Prayers to the rest of the family of Lake Charles are of whom are unable to go home for now. I can't read who that was from. My late, this is from Marilyn Malone. My Lake Charles friend is getting her roof repaired, but her house will have to be gutted. I've been helping her pack up the things that she wants to keep for storage while repairs are being made. I'm not sure whether that's a joy or a sorrow. It's probably a joy because she originally thought she was going to lose her house. Anybody else have anything to share with us? Joy for the sacred time this morning, welcoming a monarch butterfly into the world. That's from Reverend Luck. Okay, Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Your generosity enables the congregation to fulfill its mission within and beyond the church walls. You can give online or by text. Can somebody put that up on the screen, please? Or you can make arrangements with your bank to give us a gift. Or you can mail a check to CCUU in New Orleans 70124. The information in the chat box will be opened in your screen momentarily, I hope. Our second reading is an excerpt from an interview with James Baldwin in Life magazine.
All right. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. It was Dostoevsky and Dickens who taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive or who had ever been alive. Only if we face these open wounds in ourselves can we understand them in other people. So this summer, I made a crucial error. I watched the Broadway musical Hamilton about the founding fathers on Disney+. I should mention that I'm a director, playwright, actor, and drama teacher. I'm one of those theater people, so of course I watched Hamilton, and of course I'm starting my sermon by talking about Hamilton. I promise, though, under no circumstances will I rap today. Now, watching Hamilton was not a mistake because of any failing on Hamilton's part. It's a great show, 5 stars. Even my mom said that David Diggs was incredible as the Marquis de Lafayette. It was a mistake because Lin-Manuel Miranda's songs get stuck in your head like nothing else. Hamilton tunes are the ultimate in what Germans call ohrwurms or earworms that seem to burrow into your head and play themselves over and over in your brain until you are begging for mercy. There were several days this summer when one specific line got stuck in my head and would not leave me alone. It's a line of advice that George Washington sings to a young Alexander Hamilton. Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story. For a while, I couldn't understand why this line dug into my psyche like that. I'd given up hope of getting the entirety of the Hamilton cast recording out of my head, but I hoped I'd at least be able to skip to another track. Finally, I realized the connection my brain was trying to make by putting this song on autoplay in my head. In the days following George Floyd's murder, I had several of the Black people in my life say almost the exact same sentence. This is not a new story, they said. We've been telling you. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story. In the America of Hamilton the musical, George Washington is played by an actor of color, as are almost all the roles in Hamilton. In the character breakdown, he's actually described as John Legend meets Mufasa from The Lion King. In real life, George Washington was a slave owner. In school, I was told stories about George Washington cutting down the cherry tree and how he could not tell a lie. I was told he wore wooden teeth. Now we know that many of his dentures were actually made from the teeth of enslaved people. So there's no question that who tells your story is vitally important in this country, and it can even mean the difference between life and death. But since we're talking about stories, as early as 1789, the 2-volume interesting narrative of the life of Olaudah Equiano, or Gustavus Vasa the African, a so-called slave narrative, told the story of Equiano's West African boyhood, his experience through the Middle Passage, and his eventual freedom. The book challenged the moral and religious ground slavery was built on and drew international attention. In fact, between 1760 and the end of the Civil War, over 100 narratives of enslaved people and formerly enslaved people were published. Black people have been telling their story in America for as long as they have been here. but it has taken hundreds of years for white people to even begin to listen. Or if we have listened, we haven't listened in the way we should have. This summer, I realized that I haven't been doing a good job of reading the stories of my Black friends, family, and neighbors. I saw the stories of police brutality and all the other inequities and injustices around race in this country, and I truly thought I understood them. But I was reading those stories like I used to read my textbooks the night before a test. I was skimming for the facts without really getting at the heart and the weight of the story. After the murder of George Floyd, after the protests, after hearing my Black friends' anguish, I'm reminded that you can't understand something unless you allow yourself to feel it. Understanding can't be an intellectual exercise. And given the intensity of the pain, the depth of the grief, the length and level of the injustice, I haven't been feeling it deeply enough, not by a long shot. I've been skimming the real story. This is a painful failing. I hate feeling that I've let people down that I care about. This summer, I was blindsided when I learned of the racist practices of organizations I worked with and friends that I thought I knew. How could I have not known? I wasn't paying enough attention. I was wrapped up in my own story, and so I didn't read the stories around me. This failing is all the more poignant for me because it is literally my job as a theater director to read stories closely and deeply in order to discover the raw emotion, humanity, and suffering beneath the text. How could I be so good at reading the stories of fictional people and fail to see so much in real life? Could I really be giving more attention, concentration, and empathy to fictional characters like Blanche Dubois or Willie Loman than to my neighbors, friends, and fellow citizens? I started to think about how I was taught to read a play in directing school. I wondered how these techniques might illuminate real life for me as they'd illuminated so many plays. In a play, we always start with the given circumstances. The givens are all of the objective facts given up to us by the playwright. When I start work on a play, the first thing I do is make a big list of all of the given circumstances. What year does the play take place in? Where does it take place? What time of year is it? What's the weather like? Who's related to each other? What's the character's occupation? That kind of thing. Some given circumstances for our moment, just as an example. I'm in New Orleans. The year is 2020. It's 90 degrees outside. I'm 46 years old, but thankfully there's an enhance my appearance function on Zoom. I was taught to start with the facts of a play because we are so eager to find ourselves in a story. If there's a character who's a mother, we jump to make that mother our mother and superimpose all of our mother's qualities onto that character, whether that's the author's purpose or not. So you might say that there's no room for fake news when you're trying to figure out a play. It's so easy to ignore given circumstances when they aren't about you. But if we ignore certain facts, we never get at the full picture. So some other given circumstances for our moment. Legally sanctioned slavery in America lasted for 244 years. It has only been 157 years since emancipation. A study of nearly 100 million traffic stops from around the country has concluded that on average, Black drivers are 20% more likely to get pulled over than white drivers. Black Americans make up 13% of the population, but are killed by police at more than twice the rate of white Americans, account for 39% of COVID-related deaths, and 40% of our incarcerated population. Of course, these kind of dry statistics are what I knew before. These are exactly the kind of facts you scan for when you are skimming. When I'm directing a play, I'll take dry facts like these, the givens, and help the actor to personalize them. It's what the Russian director Konstantin Stanislavski called the magic if. The ability to imagine oneself in a set of fictional circumstances and to envision the consequences of finding oneself facing that situation. It is empathy embodied in the actor's whole self. The magic if is the fundamental tool for acting. You bring your own emotions and life experiences to this character that only lives on paper, and out of that create a performance that can make an audience weep with recognition. But if the magic if is necessary to create a truthful fictional world, it's even more necessary in real life, where the guns have bullets, not blanks, and the fallen don't get to stand up again for the curtain call. In my experience as a director, the biggest impediment to acting the magic if is what we call judging your character. If you hold a character at arm's length, you can never crawl inside their story. When an actor is creating a role, even if that person is someone they dislike, they have to put that aside and see their character as the hero of the story. I've heard actors say of their characters, oh, they're just evil, oh, they're dumb, they're selfish, they don't care about anyone. But the real telltale sign that an actor is judging their character is when they say, I would never do that. When an actor finds themselves proclaiming that they would never do something as terrible as their actor does, they're in real trouble. The truth is, we really only know what we are capable of under the given circumstances of our own lives. Under my current circumstances, I can't imagine committing robbery. But if my family were starving or my child needed an operation, my moral high ground becomes shakier. And so, if you think you would never commit an act of vandalism, ask, who would the statue need to be of in order for you to tear it down and throw it in the river? But there's a reason actors judge their characters. It's often to protect themselves from experiencing another person's pain, and by doing so, face their own. In real life, though, when we avoid the depth and breadth of another human being's pain, we're not only refusing to read their story, we are rewriting it for our own comfort. He had a record. He had a weapon. Why didn't he just do as he was told? When we hear ourselves say these things or think them, we are really saying, I would never do that. We are distancing ourselves from the pain, and we are distancing ourselves from our responsibility. We are distancing ourselves from having to face the parts of ourselves that are ugly, scary, and shameful, and protecting ourselves at someone else's expense. Another line from a play keeps replaying in my head. This one's from a part I played in college, Ouisa and John Guare's 6 Degrees of Separation. In the play, Ouisa and Flan, her husband, meet a young Black man named Paul who claims to be the son of Sidney Poitier. It's eventually revealed that Paul is in fact a con man, and he disappears. Flan is happy to go back to his old life, but Ouisa feels changed and wants to hold on to the feeling. She says, and we turn him into an anecdote to dine out on or dine in on. But it was an experience. I will not turn him into an anecdote. How do we fit what happened to us into life without turning it into an anecdote with no teeth and a punchline you'll mouth over and over for years to come? Tell the story about the imposter who came into our lives. That reminds me of the time this boy... And we become these human jukeboxes spilling out these anecdotes. But it was an experience. How do we keep the experience? Right now, as a white woman in America, I am terrified that we are on the brink of turning Black lives into an anecdote. How do we keep the experience? In the theater, we're lucky. When we want the audience to pay attention, we sit them down in one place. We dim the lights. We tell them to turn off their phones. We put a spotlight on exactly what we want them to see. Maybe COVID did that for us. Without the usual distractions and with our own anxieties and worries, we were opened up, vulnerable, so that when we saw the news of George Floyd's death, we were able to see his murder in spotlight. We were able to read the story for what it was, able to feel something of the betrayal, the hurt, our responsibility to fix this white-made nightmare. But like a curtain dropping at the end of a play, our COVID worries will recede. Though it's still a threat, I already feel the urgency around the disease dissipating. People are traveling, eating out, kids are going back to school. We grew tired of being afraid. I'm afraid we white people are tiring of the fight for social justice too. I've been to so many plays where I have sat in the dark with the actors and I have heard them and felt them. I've been moved. Their hopes, dreams, desires were mine in that moment. I felt so utterly connected to the people on stage and to their stories. But when the house lights came up, I wiped my eyes and exited the theater. Before I knew it, I was seated at a restaurant, having a drink, talking about the costumes, the lights, the holes in the plot. I feel like this summer, white people, well, a lot of us, not enough, have been in that darkened theater, and we have finally heard the story that the Black community has been screaming at us for literally hundreds of years. A story of casual violence, brutality, injustice, and silence. But I am terrified that white people, myself included, will mistake the lives of our Black countrymen as a fiction. We cannot engage in social justice work for some sense of catharsis. We've got to fix this. We made this. How do we keep the experience? Are we going to do the hard work of paying attention for the long haul? Or are we going to go grab a bite? That Hamilton lyric is still in my head. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story. But we do have control over what stories we pay attention to. We have control over whether we turn away. We have control over how we read one another's stories and how well. In directing school, we talked about building the world of the play, that all of the director's choices make a unique world that exists only for that production. In order to build our world, America, into a world that is just and equitable, we need to start reading each other's stories, literally and figuratively. We need to hear them, all of them, feel them, inhabit them. In our reading, James Baldwin said, "Only if we face these open wounds in ourselves can we understand them in other people." If there's anything I've learned in a lifetime of studying plays, it is that there are two things that every human being seems to want: to be seen and to be connected to other people. And like it or not, it's the pain that connects us. That web of interconnectedness is woven by the spider of our disappointment, our fears, our betrayals, and our losses. The line I've quoted from Hamilton is from a song called "History Has Its Eyes on You." Well, it's easy to imagine history's eyes on all of us in 2020. But history's eyes aren't looking at us from a dry, but history's eyes are looking at us from a dry textbook, the kind you skim trying to memorize dates for the test. There are other eyes on us, belonging to friends, family, colleagues, members of this congregation. The eyes say, "See me, see us, let yourself hurt with us." They say, "This is not a new story." Thank you.
Very nice. That's by Amy Holtcamp, and Amy is a graduate of the seminar that Reverend Darcy taught, having to do with they call it the shared pulpit. So if anybody's interested in learning to, I don't know if you could be able to rise to the level of what Amy just gave us, but it's having to do with learning how to produce one of these things. And it's a very stimulating experience. I'd highly recommend it if anybody would like to give it a try. Amy, do we have a benediction?
Yes, we do. Our benediction today is by UU Minister Kimberly Quinn Johnson. Hush, Somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten, calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling our name. What shall we do?
And Alicia, do we have closing music?
Be thou with us now and always, now and always. Blessed be.
We're glad that you joined us in this time of worship and worth giving, and hope that something spoke to you. Stay connected if you wish, because in 10 minutes, our member past president, Dion DeVille, will preside over a virtual coffee hour. Virtual coffee hour will begin 10 minutes from now.